Well, to this now, Police Minister Bheki Cele has acknowledged the growing concern over the increase in political assassinations as the 2024 elections approaches. Reports indicate that more than 5 councillors have been killed across various provinces, including Kwazulu-Natal, the Northwest Province, Mpumalanga and the Eastern Cape. The South African Local Government Association in KZN has called for additional interventions to address this alarming trend. So what are the drivers of the violence? Godfrey Mulaudzi, Public Violence Monitor Institute of Security Studies, joins me now. Thank you so much for your time. So the concern for political violence, has been ongoing for years, just given the history of especially political assassinations. Already we know that about 480 politically motivated assassinations were reported from 2000 to 2023. I think 10 such killings in the first 4 months of this year alone. So, how concerned should we be going into this particular, election and having listened to what the Nat Joints had to say about hotspots?
Thanks and greetings to you and the viewers. I think the concern in the, towards the national elections of political killings are not as much as compared to the local government elections. And that's why you would see in the statistics, it is mostly ward councillors, PR councillors, or municipal senior officials that get to be killed or attacked. But it's not just killing. The political attacks, political violence, also in as far as some of these councillors' houses get to just be burnt or their properties get to be damaged. But when we look at the national elections, political killings or assassinations are not really much prevalent in our space. What we see mostly when we look at national election, it's more of the intolerance of political parties towards each other when it comes to campaigning, the so-called no-go areas. I think you have seen few instances in Polokwane recently, the EFF and ANC. If you look at KZN in the North, Zululand district, that is mostly when we speak about the national elections, that's just more about intolerances. But, the local government elections, because that is where mostly there is, competition of resources or accessing resources within the municipality. I think that is what the problem is.
But in the likelihood something does happen, I don't want to preempt anything, but we have seen in this country, the violence that has been leveled against people. Just July 2021 unrest, and the high panel report that followed that found that the police intelligence failed to stop that particular unrest. How confident then should we be that in the likelihood of an unrest of that nature, that our law enforcement authorities are, ready?
Thanks. That's important because we now, and I'm happy you've made reference to the 21 July because that is a point of reference now. And of course, shortcomings on the part of the security structures have been outlined. Recommendations were made. The Nat Joint, it's fully vested with those, and I think we have had their statements recently in the past, in the preparations of these elections. But I think, what's so important for us as civil societies, as researchers, as media, and everybody else is to continue to mobilize people to be on the side of the rule of law. And I know that South Africans are people who love order. And when we approach these elections, our IEC has got a reputation of running very credible, free and fair elections where people participate openly. And political parties themselves has it upon themselves to ensure that they abide by the code of conduct that they themselves have signed, and also encourage their members to conduct themselves in a manner that is befitting. I think that it is in the interest of political parties and citizens that the elections are free and fair, which I have no doubt it will be, given the integrity of the IEC and also the readiness on the part of the enforcement agencies.
We've also heard, of course, from Nat Joints, about, threat analysis that was conducted by Police Crime Intelligence. They've highlighted concerns, that the upcoming elections could be disrupted by some levels of be it violence, intimidation, and possible boycotts around certain hotspots. I mean, out of the over 23,000 voting stations that we have, they have identified some of those hotspots there. Is it a question of it being a problem at a voting station, or do you think they are highlighting hotspots in as far as an area is concerned?
So the analysis of the hotspot, and I think that's a very good work done by NetJoint or the law enforcement generally, because so looking at the previous elections in those identified hotspots areas or the high-risk voting stations, you would see that in the past, those are voting stations that have been disrupted by a number of reasons. Either could it be temporary voting stations that a tent has been erected and banned, or a school where probably the principal or the local community leader didn't come with a key or run away, disappear with a key, or the certain groupings lock the gate, right? So that those are more of the disruptions that has informed the identification of this. But I mean, again, beyond this, look, Gauteng and KZN themselves, this is the epicenter of these. These are the areas where it's the epicenter of these elections, because they account for the largest number of people who have registered to vote, right? And if you look at also historically, I could just also mention the example you gave of July 21. The footprint of that unrest was within, along the entry, KZN and Gauteng, right? So that is some of the ways of high hotspot identification. But of course, of most important, the threats that have been made recently, right? The threats that have been made recently by political parties, and in particular the NK party. These threats are threats that, if we look in the past, the proponents of the former President Zuma were credible of implementing very credible threats. We have seen that in July 21. And that's why the NetJoints or law enforcement have taken some lessons and are not leaving anything to chance at this point. Because, I mean, those threats on their own, they are a serious challenge on safety risks, security risks, and also the integrity of the IEC that has been attacked by some of these threats. We know some of the officials of IEC have been attacked. So that it's very dangerous, because it also impacts or damages the integrity of IEC. And when that is damaged, it can also create an impression to the general society that the processes cannot be trusted, or the outcome of this cannot be trusted. So that is something that we need to dispel. We need to rally behind the IEC that we have seen in the past and the process that they've outlined that are very credible and waterproof.
Now, in the event of, direct threats of violence from, for instance, members of political parties, because we have seen it even in this particular campaign. You mentioned Limpopo, where we saw two political parties at loggerheads. There were people that were shot. I believe a young child is still in hospital at the moment. We also heard, of course, from another political party that is a new entrant, also, threatening violence should they not get a particular outcome. How should law enforcement authorities then, zoom in on these particular incidences and make sure that they have, these parties on their radar? Because, I mean, I would imagine there's only one thing that the IEC can do, but law enforcement really does rely on that intelligence.
100%, and I think because you would see in the brief that NetJoint would do recently as well, that there has been several arrests on people, contravening the Electoral Act. And so there is action, there's movement there, certain people are being picked up. And I think that, parties, those people or parties that are using threats, because it just also goes beyond just those individual or members of those parties, because they also create polarizations in society, right? Because these threats, they deepen divisions in society. Which can also result with lower voter turnout, because people, they're scared to, voters are scared that their security might be jeopardized, but their safety might be jeopardized, right? Whether real or not, but because of these threats that are made. So I think that parties, as we have said, that part of their signing of this code of conduct, it is also to abide by the Electoral Act, right? There are offences that are outlined in the Electoral Act that when people are in contravention with them, they'll be picked up or fined. And I'm happy that at least the law enforcement, so far, we have seen them really picking up people. People have been charged or released on warnings. So that is important. But I think what we need to put more emphasis on It's the threats that are made by political parties, which are very few parties, though I must indicate, but we need to continuously condemn them because they are damaging the integrity of the electoral process as a whole, right? So, and I think this is what we need to speak against.
Godfrey, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate your input there. Godfrey Mulaudzi, Public Violence Monitor at the Institute of Security Studies.